Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to be here with you today. Can I also begin by respectfully acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past and present. I want to start by joining our Premier in congratulating Rebecca on your ambassadorship. It is indeed fitting to acknowledge the newly announced plumbing ambassador, and in this week it's fitting because earlier in the week the Premier launched the Queensland Women's Strategy as part of this week's Queensland Women's Week. We are a government that is committed and determined to remove barriers to job creation, whether it's the job that you do, the business that you run, or the staff that you employ. All of us know the dignity of work. And that's why we celebrate our jobs on days like today, on World Plumbers Day. And that's why we're determined to remove those barriers. We want to advance the construction industry by removing some barriers, like barriers that exist around unnecessary red tape that ties up your time and your money, barriers that mean that your business doesn't always expect to get paid on time and in full for the work that you do, and of course barriers that are preventing women and girls from achieving their goals as plumbers. So just as the Premier has asked me to work with your industry to remove those barriers, we're also rolling up our sleeves to support you to find ways to develop gender diversity in your own businesses. We're here to partner with you to bring our funds to support initiatives which improve women's access to non-traditional employment in good, solid, decent jobs like in the plumbing industry. So when I asked my 6-year-old daughter yesterday what she wanted to be when she grew up and she got a job, she didn't tell me that she wanted to be a plumber. She told me she wanted to be a teacher, and her mum's a teacher, and it's a beautiful thing that she'd want to emulate her parents. But what makes me really proud of what our government is doing is that together we can offer her a different job opportunity. We can offer her a good job in an industry that's important to the most fundamental and basic functioning of our society. So my daughter needn't be limited to the so-called traditional female roles, but thanks to the determination of our government, to people like Rebecca, we can advance the role of women in non-traditional industries. My daughter can grow up and she can become a plumber. And goodness knows, I hope she does, because I really need my incinerator fixed. I also want to thank Penny Corner and Kelvin Slade from the Master Plumbers for hosting this event. Their advocacy truly does make me sometimes wonder if indeed every day isn't World Plumbers Day. I also want to acknowledge Gary O'Halloran, State Secretary of the Plumbers Union, a union that we all know strives for the best outcome for their members and of course for this industry as a whole. And of course I want to acknowledge every single plumber in the room today. Today is a day that you can be proud of the work that you do, you can be proud of your industry, and you can be proud of your future. And as Penny mentioned, I'm a relatively new Minister for Housing and Public Works, but when I was first appointed, Penny was one of the first industry leaders on the phone. Both the Master Plumbers and the government share an understanding of the importance of the building and construction industry has on delivering jobs growth in our state. But none of that happens without plumbers. Together, we have already agreed on important reforms that will see this industry better regulated through the re-establishment of a dedicated plumbing industry regulatory body, the Services Trades Council. This is an important reform not just for plumbers, but for providing confidence to consumers in the integrity of our construction industry. What was just 2 years ago impossible is now happening because this government listened to your industry. And we have set out to advance industry leadership in partnership with organisations like the Master Plumbers, and we are delivering on those promises right now. And I tell you that the issue that impacted on me most in the last 3 months after becoming a minister has been the difficulties that subcontractors, suppliers and contractors have in ensuring that you get paid on time, every time, for the work that you do and the materials and equipment that you provide. For too long, we have accepted as normal the proposition that late payment was a normal part of business in the construction industry, that retention money was something that had to be chased for and fought for and often considered lost. Since January, I've been on the road talking to the construction industry as a whole, from subbies to developers, and everywhere, in every town, right across this state, the stories are the same. Through the Master Plumbers, I've spent time talking with probably 50 plumbing companies over the last 3 months. We've met in Brisbane, in Gladstone, we've been to Townsville, we've been to Cairns, on the Sunshine Coast in my own neighbourhood of Logan. And I've heard that change is needed, and I have heard that change is well overdue. And this government will take action to resolve these issues, and we are committed to advancing the interests of all the players in the industry, no matter how big or how small. Because no matter where I go, there are simply too many stories of family breakups, small family businesses going to the wall, and the ultimate tragedy of suicide. We know that right across the industry, people hold off on expansion. They hold off on employing an extra staff member or giving an apprentice their first shot in the industry because they can't be sure when they're finally going to get paid. So together, we need to ensure that there is confidence in the building and construction industry. And we can start by ensuring that the people who work in this industry, the plumbing contractors and their staff, have confidence that you will get paid on time, in full and every time. Hearing the voices of industry while we consider important issues like the security of payments is important. It's the insight and the real-world experience that you all have, the people in this room have, that is powerful stuff when it comes to making the right decisions. As a government, to advance the sometimes competing interests of consumers, suppliers and licensed trades, we rely on that real-world insight. That is why we committed to the re-establishment of the Services Trades Councils during the last election campaign, a commitment that is being delivered on and will be finalised in coming months. The Services Trade Council will provide not just an independent regulatory body, but another powerful voice for your industry to our government. And that's what we've done. I want you to be able to tell people our government is delivering, that we are genuinely advancing Queensland's building and construction industry. You can tell them that we worked in partnership to develop a reform package that reinstated a voice for plumbing industry in this state, one that is advancing the leadership of your industry. And it's a voice for industry that will help advance this state, and it will help us deliver infrastructure that relies on plumbing in a way that sees us deliver jobs, in a way that sees us lead innovation and best practice in the plumbing sector, in a way that is safe not just for plumbers, but for the whole community. And we took those advances to the Queensland Parliament, and that bill is now ready for debate. And we will deliver these advances to industry representation in the coming sitting weeks of Parliament, with the first formal meeting of the Services Trades Council to happen in this financial year. What a difference a year can make. I want to hear from industry how we can work together to remove the barriers to advancing your business and employing more Queenslanders. I want to continue to hear from the leaders of this industry. I want to hear from people like Trevor, who Penny introduced me to in Townsville last week. Trevor had a real contribution to make. His insights into this industry, and in particular, how government can do better. Thanks to a meeting arranged by the Master Plumbers, Trevor shared with me how we can do better on the apprentices and traineeship deal on government projects. He explained to me how the good players in the plumbing industry sometimes get a raw deal on many construction projects, including our own government projects. That is the real-world input that we need. That real-world input that this government is going to make sure that we listen to. That's the real-world input that we're going to get through the Services Trades Council. And it's the real-world input that we get through the Master Plumbers. Trevor's input has led to me demanding that we step up the enforcement of the apprentice and traineeship provisions on government projects. Projects like the $11.9 million upgrade to the Cairns Convention Centre roof that we'll be delivering. We'll enforce those provisions to advance the interests of young people looking to get a start in your industry. Now, of course, the other thing that Trevor's conversation reminded me of is that I'm not just a regulator of plumbers, I'm also very reliant on plumbers. And I'm reliant because of the 55,000 homes my department, the Department of Housing and Public Works, manages the functioning of. Reliant to keep the thousands of schools, government buildings and courthouses that we manage all functioning. And I know that many plumbers and members of many other trades are reliant on that work to keep your businesses ticking over. So like you, it's important that I understand what lies ahead so that we can plan. Through both the State Infrastructure Plan and my department's reform of the Queensland Government procurement process, I intend to make sure there is clarity, and I excuse the pun, about a pipeline of work for the plumbing industry. And of course we need to deliver that work locally, advancing local economies, local communities and local small businesses. We also need to be able to remain nimble enough to keep the construction industry moving when local economies face shocks, like the shocks that we're seeing in Townsville at the moment. That's the purpose of our government's Accelerated Works program, to keep local economies moving even when things go wrong. That is the fundamental difference between this government and the last one. We will stand up for regional jobs and regional economies, and we will do it by ensuring that people remain in work. Again, we are aiming to ensure you can confidently plan for expansion and growth in your business. And we can begin by contemplating the need on the other side of my portfolio to deliver thousands of new houses and apartments over coming years. So in conclusion, I want to leave you with a clear picture. A picture which sees a plan for upcoming work, a clear security of payment, a simpler, more advanced licensing regime, knowing the importance of keeping our local economies alive, and of course, putting local contractors first. These are the essential ingredients to advancing job creation in Queensland. These are important tasks that we as a government, and I as your minister, need to complete. This is what this government wants you to know on World Plumbers Day, because we value your industry. It is vital in our push to advance this state. Today on World Plumbers Day, we congratulate the Master Plumbers. We congratulate every plumber in this room. Happy World Plumbers Day.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, I want you to stay on stage if you wouldn't mind. I have two gentlemen who'd like to come and join us. Kelvin Slade, President of Master Plumbers, and Mick Weish, the Assistant State Secretary of Plumbing Union. If you'd like to come and grab a seat up here, gentlemen. I believe you have a few questions for our Minister. There's no phone a friend in this one, Minister, by the way. You're on your own.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right, I'll leave the stage and it's all over to you guys.
I actually feel like you've partly answered my question, but nevertheless, I'll put it to you anyway. When we first met in your office, you expressed an interest and a concern about the welfare of family-owned businesses in Queensland. Many of the people in this room this morning are either employed by or indeed own family businesses. So how does your agenda as Minister, that we are responsible to, how is that going to play out in your agenda and your goals as Minister?
Thanks very much for the question, Kelvin. And Kelvin's right. When we first sat down, we talked about the importance of family, and we've heard about the importance of family from Rebecca this morning as well. Many of us grew up in small businesses. I come from a small business family as well. My mum and dad still run their business. I wish they'd retire and spend more time looking after my kids, but they haven't quite got there yet. I think that's maybe why they've chosen to keep working. But we know how important small businesses and family businesses are in particular, not just to the Queensland economy and regional economies, but of course to the building and construction and plumbing industry. And what Kelvin shared with me was his concern that those family businesses were doing it tough. So I made it my commitment to go out and meet with as many of those small business people and talk with them about what was making life tough for them. And consistently, no matter whether it was in my hometown of Logan at the Fitzy's Hotel, where we met with dozens of plumbers, or when I went to Gladstone or the Sunshine Coast, what we heard from them was that there was a cultural and systemic problem in the building and construction industry where you just can't rely on getting paid. And some of it stems from insolvency in the contracting chain. Some of it stems from an abuse of retention retention money. But the impacts that we heard when, for example, when major building projects go to the wall are devastating, consistently devastating when families lose their own small business, when that leads to family breakup. We know that in the trades area that the rate of suicide amongst young men is double that of any other population group. And part of that, I think, has to come down to a concern that you might not get paid for the work that you do. I fundamentally believe that that is wrong, and every time I sit down with a plumbing contractor, a subcontractor, they tell me that they believe that is wrong. Our government believes that if you do the work, that if you supply the materials, then you should get paid on time, in full, every time. And we're determined to make reforms in this state that deliver a security of payment in the construction industry. It's a good thing for small family businesses, it's a good thing for our economy, and I'll tell you why it's a good thing for our economy. Because I think that if you're a small business person and you can guarantee that you're going to get paid, you're going to employ an apprentice, you're going to buy new equipment, you're going to expand your business. And if your staff know that that's happening in their workplace, they're going to be more confident to go and spend. And that's the sort of confidence that our government wants to continue to build in this state, because that will grow jobs and that'll grow employment security and it will grow industries like the plumbing sector. So it was great that Kelvin and the Master Plumbers have provided me with an opportunity over the last 3 months to meet with those 50 plumbing contractors and their staff, because I understand that this problem is real. And as I said, I'm determined to work with the Master Plumbers to resolve it and restore that confidence that if you do the work that you should get paid.
Thank you. There's no doubt about it that absolutely no doubt when there's confidence in your business, as I can personally testify to, you are more inclined to actually go and do what you need to do to grow your business, which bleeds out into the economy. One more question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Your actions and your decisions as our Minister directly affect all of us in this industry, in the construction industry. I suppose my next question is with regards to large-scale construction, which we all look to the government for.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with your agenda and the Palaszczuk government's agenda, how is that going to help us or the government policies? What have you got in mind that would help stimulate, whether it's infrastructure spending or large-scale construction? Because Penny mentioned earlier that our majors group, there's about 20-something, is that right, Penny? And there's 20 businesses employ probably around 1,200 people. Mm-hmm. So some comfort to them would be most welcome.
That's a really good question as well, and I think the simple answer to, what do I think of large-scale construction? I think I like it. We should see lots of it, but how do we do that is the tricky thing. I think in the last couple of months, there's 3 key things that we've been focused on, and I think industry's been focused on. The first one I wanted to mention was the issue of non-conforming building products. The major construction industry has a bit of a risk that's you've probably read about with building products that are coming into the country from overseas that are poorly regulated. What that's doing is having a bit of a negative impact on confidence in the building and construction sector. So we worked extremely quickly, and I want to thank the staff of my department, the Department of Housing and Public Works, who consulted with industry that allowed me to attend a Commonwealth Building Ministers Forum just 2 weeks ago, where we successfully negotiated and won for the first time ever an agreement with the Commonwealth to limit the importation of non-conforming products, to work on border protection, to work on a regulatory system that make sure that that stuff doesn't go up on our buildings. So when that stuff does go up on our buildings, it can create delays in the certification process. And what we know when that happens is that we see delays in final payments, and that can impact on that level of confidence. So that's a good start. And of course, we're also looking at the manufactured pods that are existing as well. And I think we should be considering those in a similar way in the way that we treat non-conforming products. People will have seen the draft state infrastructure plan that the Deputy Premier and Minister for Infrastructure has been receiving feedback from the community on over the last couple of months. I understand the draft is being finalised, and as I mentioned in my address before, the draft state infrastructure plan, as it moves into its final phase for release, will outline a pipeline of major construction, major job-creating construction. And I think that's a very, very exciting thing, because for the first time in 3 years, Queensland will have an infrastructure plan. You'll be able to look at the big projects that are going to be available for you to participate in. I think it's an important piece of work. And the third thing that I think goes to major construction, and this might sound peculiar, but it's about a housing strategy. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to release a housing strategy for consultation. Now, I live in a 3-bedroom house out in the suburbs, but you only need to look around the skyline of South Bank and South Brisbane to see that that isn't necessarily the housing solution of the future. So what our housing strategy will do is invite everybody in this room, anybody who has a home or wants to build homes, be they 3-bedroom houses in the suburbs, or much more likely want to participate in major constructions on high-rise apartment blocks around not only the inner city of Brisbane, but in regional communities and in urban Queensland as well. We'd like to get your feedback on what the future of housing should look like. We want to consider sustainability. We want to consider how we create energy and water efficient homes, and I think the plumbing industry plays a significant role in that. And if the outcomes of that housing strategy say that we should be more focused on major construction, then that's where we'll look at taking the Queensland housing economy.
Thank you, but you can always count on the fact that plumbers have always got an opinion, so we'll be there for you. And with regards to non-conforming products, I think it'd be welcome news to many people in this area, but something we'd like to see on the table, and if I can just momentarily get a bit political, but point of sale legislation would be a wonderful thing for us to talk about. Yep. That's all I've got for you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Kelvin. First of all, I must thank the present government for the steps they are taking to ensure that contractors do get paid. This has a massive flow-on effect, particularly for our organisation, as it affects our members greatly. So thanks very much to the government for taking those steps. Kelvin's almost asked my question. Minister, we know that you have a great deal of responsibility for the commercial construction industry and the laws that relate to it. Can you please outline your agenda as it relates to large-scale commercial construction?
Thanks very much, Mick. Look, I think the key points for us in large-scale commercial construction is to have a pipeline of what's on the horizon, so that big players and small players, whether you're in southeast Queensland or whether you're in regional Queensland, have a clear view about what you're going to be able to contract for over coming years. Of course, we want to make sure that that steady pipeline of work is available for you so that you can continue to employ. We want people in the construction industry to be confident. So I think all of these policy areas fit together. Having a confident industry, knowing you'll get paid for the work that you're going to do, and knowing what jobs are coming ahead is all part of that. And of course, the fundamental foundation of all of this is having a good partnership with the industry to receive advice. The Services Trades Council does that, participation from the Master Plumbers does that, and participation from the Plumbers Union does that. So our agenda is one of job creation, one of growing our economy. I think major construction is a big part of that, and that's why we're committed to sitting down with our industry partners to figure out a plan forward.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Well, there you have it. Very well done, guys. So thank you to Kelvin, thank you to Mick. And also to our Minister, here's a small little gift of appreciation. It's not a bottle of water, but it is a bottle of something, so I hope you do enjoy that. Thank you very much for your time. Would you please put your hands together once more for Minister Mick Brenni.